And now we're getting into strange and mediocre territory. And after that, it's the bare minimum. But for now, we're going to talk about what started the downfall of LarryBoy. Seeing that LarryBoy was becoming popular among VeggieTales fans, Big Idea thought it would be a very good idea to see this hero get his own spin-off. What promised to be a smash hit turned out to be a flop that only lasted for 4 episodes. And what started this awkwardness was LarryBoy and the angry eyebrows. Now, I'm not ashamed to admit that this video was what got me introduced to LarryBoy. Nah, it wasn't Fib or Rumorweed, but the angry eyebrows video that got me into the LarryBoy fandom. Something about this video got me interested, but that's not saying that it's the best. Well, let's look at the story. LarryBoy is back and he does his usual stick of being a superhero. In fact, this show's intro was smart enough to show him doing just that. And then we're introduced to a villain named Awful Alvin, who has a floor lamp for a sidekick. And he plans to enslave people with his angry eyebrows, and he wants to do the same to LarryBoy, in which that eventually happens. But LarryBoy somehow defeats this villain by running the eyebrows into a machine. So the story is simple enough, right? Then you realize that the story isn't that good either. It's like the series wants to separate itself from the CG videos. I mean, sure, he still lives with his butler Archie in a mansion, and his costume still looks the same with the exception of a cape. But I'm talking about these added features like him working as a janitor and him going to a superhero school. To me, those were awkward. Now what's even more awkward is the animation. Well, not that the animation is bad per se, because that's Tom Bancroft, the guy who had a hand in some movies during the Disney Renaissance. Speaking of animation, this was done by Cornerstone Animation, which helped in some Disney spin-off movies and videos and whatnot. However, just because there's an animation company and a talented animator attached to this series doesn't make this series the best. Some of the animation is alright, but then you have moments when you feel like this video series was rushed out. You have shapes that are disproportionate, you have areas that look unfinished, people talking with no background. In other words, with the supposed time limit that this production had, it seemed like they couldn't go back and fix some of the problems. So you might get uncomfortable scenes like when the villain is talking and scheming. Yeah, that's pretty fun to watch and laugh at. Or when LarryBoy falls victim to the angry eyebrows. I really don't know why that's a thing in this movie. So 75% of the animation in this series is, well, passable. But now let's talk more about this premiere episode. Like I said before, the story is simple, but it's simple because it doesn't seem genuine. It's just a superhero going after a villain. Like, you see this kind of story done over and over in many other cartoons. In fact, this feels like a Saturday morning cartoon rather than... Well, I guess I can point out that this wanted to feel like a Saturday morning cartoon. And this is another reason why the animation works against the series, because... Did anyone ask for this to be hand-drawn? Anyway, the story can be a bore at some points. For example, like I said, the superhero school is really pointless except to let us know what the moral of the story is. Also, the Daily Bumble scenes are boring, and don't get me started with that crazy mushroom lady who invented a machine that can turn bathtub drain hair into hats. Man, I wasn't gonna talk about that. And of course, her invention helps LarryBoy save the day, and she gets a pass for having a screaming fit about a janitor breaking her machine. And the saltiest of pretzel award goes to, but let's talk more about the villain. I see him as both a good thing and a bad thing. Take his intro scene for example, where he watches LarryBoy from an underground lair and threatens to take over the city. But then he runs to his sidekick Lampy, which completely ruins the moment where the villain is supposed to be seen as a potential threat. Like, is that supposed to scare me? It gets even more awkward when he dances to disco music. I won't get into any more of that awkwardness, and you should thank me for it. But if you'd like to hear about this villain, watch my video where I do a top 10 list about him. But anyway, I guess the only thing that this video got going for it was that it tried to capture what made LarryBoy LarryBoy in the first place. I liked how he got to keep his butler in his series, and I liked that this video tried to have a good adventure in store for him. It may not be as good as the CG videos, well, except for League. My god, that was a horrible, horrible video. But overall, I'd give this a watch. So bottom line, there's not much to get angry at yet. Okay, something about this video got me angrier than the first installment of the Cartoon Adventure series. Now, I'm not saying that this one is the worst of the bunch, because trust me, we're getting there. No, I'm talking about the writing for this episode in particular. So what's the story? Well, let me tell you, it's a letdown. The video opens with Larry and Archie riding a Ferris wheel when a cotton candy machine goes haywire. We then find out that the alchemist was behind this malfunction, and he's immediately captured. But not without spraying LarryBoy with a chemical spray, which we learn later on in a hilariously bad scene where the villains explain their plans. Yeah, there's your first problem. Notice how I said villains, not villain. You would think that the alchemist was doing everything on his own, seeing that it's only him on the cover. But production was probably like, hey, let's drag the villain's mother into this. That would make him a great supervillain. Let's have him be a mama's boy. Well, I'm sorry, but I like my villains threatening and badass, not lame and juvenile. So yeah, the villain was one thing that made me so upset about this video. And also, this video's endgame wasn't that good either. You have the hero finding the villains in their secret lair, which is nothing more than an abandoned house. Well, to be fair, it's bigger than the Bad Apple's cabin in the woods. However, there are many other villains, whether awesome or mediocre, who at least try to have a pretty cool lair. And when it comes to the hero fighting back, you have this disappointing payoff. I mean, sure, LarryBoy's ego, or him just complaining about people, it's what's making people shrink down to size, and what's fueling this monster is called the super ego. But the monster itself? Yeah, sure, just enlarge LarryBoy and change up the, the color scheme? Yeah, change that and we got a good monster. Lame. And the villains just sit on the side, watching this unfold and laughing about it. Okay, we gotta talk about the villains. I cannot stand these two. If you're gonna introduce a new villain in a series, then that's fine. But having his mother be in cahoots with this crime, it's a total turnoff. So first impression? An obvious fail. And even their evil plan is awkward. Take this scene where they show what they have in store for LarryBoy. They show this hilarious slideshow with badly drawn slides that anyone can mistake as a draw my life scenario. Heck, even a photo of the alchemist as a baby gets thrown in for no reason. Other than, hee hee ha ha, his mom has baby pictures of him. If that scene was supposed to be threatening in any way, then that was a letdown. Yeah, try practicing y'all's comedy routine somewhere else, thank you. As you can tell by now, this episode was nothing more than a complaint fest for LarryBoy and a snooze fest for our villain. Oh, I'm sorry, villains. And the story was incredibly weak. Like, you can take that one scene where Archie is on the Ferris wheel saying, I never get to ride on the Ferris wheel, then imagine that scene for a half hour. That's how boring this scenario was. Though, to be fair to it, I understand the moral being that you shouldn't put others down with senseless pride and complaining. But the climax, like I said, the central payoff to all this was disgustingly bad. A disappointment. Now, I'm gonna go into spoiler territory, but this part is important to talk about. So when the monster is defeated by I'm guessing some scientific, biological, whatever logic, it's supposed to be alchemy or something like that, I don't know. The alchemist tries to hold someone hostage, and this part really got me angry. Like, why wasn't he like that throughout the video? Because I'm sitting there like, oh sure, now you want to be threatening and all that. Well, sorry buddy, that ship has sailed. If you wanted to build up your villain to be this threatening, then leave out the mother. Leave out the corniness from earlier. But if you wait until the end to have him pull this BS stunt like this, then that's really bad. Or if you want me to be more honest with this video, then imagine the slideshow scene. Well, actually, I think the slideshow is way more entertaining than this was. At least it made it clear that this was going to be hilariously bad. The comedy writes itself actually. In hindsight, this was a video that you can either sit and watch for laughs or just simply let go. As we continue the disappointing venture through the cartoon adventure series, we've now arrived at LarryBoy and the Yodel Napper. At first, the video looks promising with our hero being trapped inside a tube, while a cool looking villain pulls the lever. Well, either she's getting ready to pull the lever, or she already has. And surprisingly, I actually enjoyed watching this episode rather than the previous one with lame ol' mama's boy. But is this episode better than the premiere episode with Awful Alvin? Well, not really. Well, LarryBoy is back, but this time, he's upset that he can't buy a Hula Heidi doll for his collection. Okay, wait a minute. That's how this thing starts? Okay. But a bigger problem arrives when a famous yodeler is kidnapped during a live stage performance, and it turns out that a villain named Greta Von Gruesome is behind the kidnappings, of which this video coins the term yodel napping. Well, okay, this villain seems very interesting. In fact, I did a top 10 list video on her, so check that out. So LarryBoy ultimately dresses up as a yodeler, and he confronts Greta and he rescues the yodelers. An interesting scenario, right? But why yodelers? Well, don't get me wrong, the story is fine. Just leave out the doll searching and the ending scene. Those were pointless. And that clay monster was just something that was tacked on. I mean, you can even look on the back cover. He's there as if he's in some way important to this story. But he's not. So why would you even have him on the box? Another thing strange about this video is that, remember in the Anchored Eyebrows video when I talked about the animation being both good and bad? Well, that's made even more obvious in this one. There would be scenes that they would animate fine, and then there would be places where they barely even tried. One scene that looked amazing was showing Greta's castle from a distance. That they did great. But there was this one scene that rubbed me the wrong way, and it was animated so awkwardly. It's literally in your face. Like, really in your face. I mean, what is that weird face that Archie makes in that part where he describes his plan to have LarryBoy dress up? Now imagine having this face stuck in your head for a good while. In fact, why isn't that a meme yet? And with the limited time that the studio had, no one was like, oh hey, this part looks awkward. Can't we animate this part differently? It's just weirding me out just having this on screen. By the way, Archie is in much of this episode, unlike the other episodes in the series. About time, right? Because normally, he's casted aside in these outings, and about time this series got back to its CG roots. Put this guy back in LarryBoy videos. Oh, let's not forget about Greta Von Gruesome. The character design is spot on, and she has these power gloves that she uses, and she can totally hold her own in a fight. In other words, no sidekicks allowed, and certainly no parents allowed. Awful Alvin, Alchemist, I hope you idiots are taking notes. Now the only problem with this villain is that the story doesn't let her do a whole lot. All she does is talk, scheme, and have a 24-second battle with LarryBoy. And the only battle that we get to see in this, well, what passes as a battle, is the scene where LarryBoy is fighting a bunch of dolls. Okay, so I might as well wrap this one up. Much like Angry Eyebrows, this one had an okay story. But like Let Go My Ego, the villains aren't given a good story to work with. That's the only explanation I can think of for this video. But you should be very afraid of what we're going to cover next. Our next video is the final nail in the coffin that killed the Cartoon Adventure series. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you have been warned. LarryBoy in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like I said at the end of my previous video, this was the final nail in the coffin for this series. It's like production said, well, no one's watching this series anymore, so let's just throw it out there. Whatever sticks to the wall, we'll use. So what stuck to their wall were bunnies, eggs, and yeah, a Mexican stereotype. You heard right, a Mexican stereotype.
I was born to dance.
We'll get to him in a minute. But the biggest insult was that the video tried to be something that it wasn't, and expects me to give it a pass because it's the series finale. But no, the story is all over the place, so no. The video opens as stupidly as it ends. It starts off trying to be as cinematic as possible with the camera panning up and then showing the Larry plane in the sky. But right away, we get into stupid territory by throwing in pigs chasing our hero in the sky. We're 2 minutes in, by the way, and already we've reached the point of no return. And to make matters worse, this other hero shows up out of nowhere and gets involved. Okay, first of all, you had only a couple of lines in the previous episode, so why do you even bother showing up in this one? So having a character that nobody cares about team up with our hero is a total letdown. Also, every time this character is on screen, you hear Mexican music playing in the background. I kid you not.
I am the Dark Claw.
We get it, he has a Mexican accent, but seriously, that's just wrong. Who is this guy, you might ask? Oh, wait, I don't care. And don't even get me started on the story. The story doesn't come together at all. We go from being chased by pigs to trying to stop a robbery. Well, 2 robberies actually. To getting their costumes ruined, to spending the rest of the video in pajamas and paper bags. You heard right, our heroes spend the climax in pajamas and paper bags. That's probably where production just gave up and let this video die before our eyes. Like, what would you do to fix this episode? Comment below if you have any suggestions on how that episode should have ended, or how you would fix the whole thing. And just like much of the series, it seems rushed. The animation can be fine in some areas, but at other times the animation can turn out awkward. Imagine staring at this image of Awful Alvin when he's staring right at us. Would you be comfortable with that stuck in your head for a while? I feel like I should apologize to Archie for his awkward face moment from the previous episode. By the way, Archie is barely in this. It's like production said, whoa, we gave him way too much screen time in the last one. Let's not use him ever again. Anyway, I hate the story. It's a mess. A train wreck of a mess. Or better yet, a fill in the blank of a mess. Yeah, fill in the blank, folks. But wait, LarryBoy Fanatic, wasn't there anything good in it? Well, I liked that Awful Alvin and Greta Von Gruesome were both in this. But with a bad story like this, how can you blame them for being in this? And man, even Awful Alvin at some point looks at her heroes weird after they try to say the word inanimate. I mean, seriously, if the weirdest character in the series is looking at you and saying,
Right.
then there's something definitely wrong with your video. And then having the gall, the audacity to have our heroes running around in pajamas and paper bags. I can't believe that that's what they resort to near the climax. This can't be a legitimate LarryBoy video. This looks like a Saturday morning cartoon gone wrong, just like they did with their super shorts. which we'll get into in my next video, unfortunately. Now, I'm sorry if I was too harsh with this one, but if a video as stupid as this one is bold enough to slap LarryBoy's name on the title, then it should definitely be bold enough to be judged as a LarryBoy video. I can safely say that this one is the worst video of not only the Cartoon Adventure series, but also the worst of all the LarryBoy videos, period. It cared very little for our main hero. The villains were suckered into this story, and for the very last time, nobody cares about that Dark Crow character. You understand? Okay. The good, the bad, and the ugly. You can't get any more ridiculous than this. Well, except for the super shorts. But whatever, I'm gonna do those next. Bye.